I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing, told the room he handled all the finances. Tomorrow, he'll learn he was the investment I studied the longest. They laughed about my potatoes. Tomorrow, I'll serve the receipts and let them chew on the truth. He thought I was a secretary who got... I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing lucky. He never once asked what my nameplate actually said. The crystal wine glass trembled slightly in my hand as I listened to my husband Tom brag to his family about his latest investment success. I carefully arranged the perfectly cooked roast on our formal while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact dining table, the one I bought with my own money. Have you conveniently forgotten that detail? Adrian's just lucky I handle all our finances, he announced of his nodding family members. You know how these secretary types are. With money, they get a little promotion. He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back and think, they understand business. His sister Jennifer laughed that high-pitched sound that always set my teeth on edge. Well, he certainly married up. Remember, when he was just answering phones at that bank, I smiled surly as I poured more wine for my mother-in-law. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing Barbara, who was wearing the designer dress I'd gifted his last Christmas, though Tom had taken credit for that too. More wine, Barbara. Oh yes, dear. He patted my hand condescendingly. You know, Adrian, you really should let Tom handle everything. Men just understand they built their power on condescension and called it charm things better. My household always said women shouldn't worry their pretty heads about finances. If they only knew, I've been watching Tom's financial manipulations for months now, carefully documenting every transaction, every hidden account, every business dinner that somehow always included his young assistant Jessica, every smirk he gave. I filed away with their seats. My position as CEO of one of the largest financial institutions in the city had its advantages. My dear husband had no idea about Adrian's great, with the small stuff. Tom continued gesturing with his wine. Glass running the household, organizing dinner parties, but he saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back the big decisions. Well, that's why he has me. I placed the last dish on the table and took my seat, smoothing my channel dress. Another's purchase. Tom assumed he'd funded the roast. Looks lovely, doesn't it? I tried a new recipe. Speaking of recipes, every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts. Tom's faithis. Harold boomed. Tom tells me you're still working at that bank. Wouldn't it be better to focus on home life? Maybe start a family? I took a small sip of wine. Oh, I enjoy keeping busy. The bank's been doing quite well, actually. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing. That reminds me. Tom interrupted, clearly annoyed that the Congress had shifted away from his accomplishments. I just made another brilliant investment move, doubled our money in a week. He winked at his sister, though of course Adrian doesn't need to worry about those details. He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table. What Tom didn't know was that I've been watching. His brilliant investment moves drain our joint accounts for months, or rather, that's what he thought. Were our joint accounts the real money? My money was safely tucked away where he couldn't touch it every time. They built their power on condescension and called it charm, bragged about his financial acumen. I documented it every time he belittled my career. I added it to my growing file. Tell them about your promotion, dear. I suggested quietly, knowing exactly what he'd say. Oh, that's right. Tom grinned broadly. Senior VP of Operations. The silence I wore wasn't weakness, it was armor. Though honestly, the title's just a formality. I've been basically running things for months. I suppressed a smile, thinking of the board meeting I had scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tom had no idea that his promotion was actually part of an internal investigation. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting. Building, preparing, initiated months ago as CEO. I had to maintain certain standards of integrity. After all, Adrian, the potatoes are a bit dry, my mother-in-law commented. Perhaps if you spent more time practicing your cooking instead of playing. At being a businesswoman, you're right, Barbara, he didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table. Agree read, pleasantly. Practice makes perfect, just like the practice I had documenting Tom's creative accounting at work. His unauthorized loans from company accounts, and his interesting habit of creating hell companies with company funds. The dinner continued with its usual pattern. Tom bragging his. He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back family fawning, and me playing the role of the quiet, supportive wife. They never questioned why we lived. In such a luxurious home on what they thought was just Tom's salary, they never wondered how we afforded the vacation homes, the luxury cars, the expensive he saw. My smile, and missed the storm. It held back whines. Tom loved to show off. Oh, Adrian, Jennifer called as I cleared the plates. Tom mentioned you might need help with the household accounts. I'd be happy to show you how to budget properly. That's very kind, I replied, stacking the WG wood china while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact I'd inherited from my grandmothers, but I think I'm managing to spend my money. You mean, Tom joked, earning more laughter from his family. Good thing I keep the important accounts separate, if he only knew how separate. Our accounts really were, they built their power on condescension and called it charm. Quietly monitoring his secret account at my bank for months, the one he thought I knew nothing about, the one wise he'd been funneling company funds, preparing for what he probably thought would be a clean getaway with Jessica later that night, after his family every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts had left, and Tom had retreated to his study to make another of his late-night business calls. I sat in my home office reviewing the final documentation for tomorrow's board meeting. Everything was in place. The audit trails the transaction, records the surveillance photos while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact of Tom's business dinners, and of course the complete record of his offshore accounts. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Tom's assistant meeting still on for tomorrow. Everything's ready. Yes, I replied. Everything's perfect. What Tom didn't know was that Jessica wasn't just every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts. His assistant, he was my head of internal security, placed this specifically to monitor his activities. Every flirtatious email, every inappropriate touch, every questionable transaction have been carefully documented. I heard Tom laughing in his study, probably on the phone with one of his cronies while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact, bragging about his latest financial conquest. Let him laugh, tomorrow would be soon enough for revelations. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my CFO. Final audit report complete. It's worse than we thought. Perfect, I replied. See you at tomorrow's board. The silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor meeting. I closed my laptop and prepared for bed, maintaining the facade of the beautiful wife one last time. Tomorrow Tong would learn exactly what kind of secretary he married tomorrow. He'd discover what happens when you underestimate a woman who worked his way up while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact from answering phones to running the entire bank. Tomorrow he'd learn that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should watch out for. As I laid in bed, listening to Tom's muffled voice still chattering away in his study, I thought about the journey he saw my smile and missed. The storm it held back that had brought me his 15 years ago. I really had started as a secretary at the bank. I'd watched, learned, worked harder than anyone else, earned my MBA at night, while Tom complained about my hobby and steadily climbed the corporate ladder while maintaining every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts, the image of the supportive wife his family expected. Tom had never questioned why I stayed at the same bank all these years. He'd never wondered why I didn't. Seemed bothered by his controlling attitude toward our finances. He'd never even asked about my actual. They built their power on condescension and called it charm position at the bank, happy to assume I was still just a glorified secretary who, gotten lucky with a few promotions. Tomorrow everything would change. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Tom's promotion announcement was on the agenda, along with a few. The silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor. This surprises he wasn't expecting. I smiled in the darkness, thinking about the security footage from his favorite restaurant. The credit card statements showing purchases from Tiffany's, certainly not for me, and the detailed records of his creative accounting. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about he saw my smile and missed the storm it held back getting even. It's about being patient, being prepared, and being underestimated. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Barbara. Thank you for dinner, dear, though. Next time, do try harder with the potatoes. AW should know how to cook properly. I saved every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts, the message to my evidence folder, then set my alarm for 6 memoire. MU tomorrow would be a busy day, and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss a moment of it. The last thing I heard before drifting off to sleep was Tom's voice. He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table, still bragging in his study, still convinced he was. The smartest person in the house let him have this one last night of feeling superior tomorrow would change everything. And the best part, he'd never see it coming the next morning. I arrived at the They Built Their Power on Condescension and called it Charm Bank's headquarters at my usual time, 7A. Monsieur Sharp. The early morning light glinted off the building's glass facade as I pulled into my reserved parking spot, the one marked CEO that Tom had never noticed during his occasional visits. Tom had left earlier, excited the silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor about his promotion announcement. He kissed my cheek, reminding me to try not to spend too much today, honey. I'd smiled and waved goodbye. Watching him drive off in the luxury car I bogged him last Christmas, Jessica met me. At the elevator tablet in the silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor hand. Everything's ready, he reported professionally. The board members have all arrived early as requested, and the Audi T has prepared their presentation and Tom in his office preparing his acceptance speech. He's been practicing all morning. He smirked slightly. Chi also made dinner reservations. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing for tonight at Lurk Table for 2, and I don't think... The second seat was meant for you. I nodded, stepping into my corner office with its sweeping city views. Make sure security is ready. I expect things might get emotional at 8:55 while he played with numbers, I was calculating impact. Assistant Bradley knocked on my door. They're all assembled in the boardroom, Mrs. Chen, including Mr. Chen. I gathized my files and straightened my Armani suit. Another's purchase, Tom assumed, came from his money time to get this started. The boardroom fell silent as he didn't notice the ledger in my hands, while he bragged at the table, entered. Tom sat near the middle of the long table, practically bouncing with excitement. He'd never attended a board meeting before, and clearly thought this was his moment of triumph. Adrian, his voice carried a note of confusion. What are you doing? Here's the secretaries. They built their power on condescension, and called it charm, usually just, leave the coffee. I took my place at the head of the table, noting how several board members were hiding, smiles behind their hands. Actually, Tom, I called this meeting. I nodded to Bradley, who began distributing folders to everyone present. We have. He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table, several items to discuss today. But my promotion, Palm started, then fell silent as he opened his folder. Yes, about that. I smiled pleasantly as CEO of this bank I do me to address. Some concerns about your recent activities. The color drained from Tom's. He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back face as he flipped through the pages. CEO, but you're just a seeker, Terry. I phenide for him. That was quite a few promotions. Ego, dear. Though you never did ask about my actual position, he's too busy managing our finances. I suppose the silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor board members watched with varying degrees of interest as Tom continued to stare. At the documentation in front of him, photos of his dinners with various women, detailed records of his unauthorized transfers, copies of emails outlining his plans to embezzle funds. It was all every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts. This is a mistake, he stammered. I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can, I agreed, just like you can explain the offshore account you opened last month. Or perhaps you'd like to explain the hell companies you created using bank funds the same. He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back funds you've been bragging about to your family as your brilliant investment. Moves? Tom's face had gone from pale to slightly green. How did you know? I finned for him again, Tom. I don't just work highs, I am controlling interest in this bank. Those they built their power on condescension, and called it charm accounts, you thought, was so cleverly hidden. They're at my bank. Those investment moves you were so proud of. I've been tracking every one of them. The boardroom remained silent as Tom frantically flipped through the pages, his hands shaking. But our house, the cars, every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts. My house, I corrected gently, my grandmother's actually, and the cars, the vacation homes, the expensive wines you love to show off to your family, I'll purchase with my money, though you were too busy assuming I was just a simple secretary to ever question every smirk he gave. I filed away with the receipts. Why's it all came from Mrs. Chen? One of the board members interrupted. Should we proceed with the formal accusations? Yes, I think we should. I nodded to Jessica, who stepped forward with another set of documents. Tom, you're being terminated for cause effective immediately while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact. The evidence of your embezzlement has been forwarded to the proper authorities. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. You can't do this to me. Tom K's voice had risen to a near shriek. I'm your husband. About that, I extracted. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting. Building. Preparing. Another document from my portfolio. These are divorce papers given the evidence of your financial misconduct and multiple affairs. My lawyers expected to be quite straightforward. The security team had entered silently, taking positions near Tom. He looked around wildly, seemingly noticing for the first. He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back time that everyone in the room knew exactly who I was and who he wasn't. My family. They'll never believe I took care. Of that too. I pressed a button on my phone. Bradley, the boardroom screen lit up with a video feed in that they built their power on condescension and called it Charm Bank's main reception area. Tom's entire family sat watching a similar presentation of his activities. I'd invited them to witness this moment, though they thought they were highs to celebrate his promotion. They're seeing everything, Tom. The embezzlement, the affairs, the lies they're learning that he didn't notice the ledger in. My hands while he bragged at the table. All those gifts you took credit for, the vacations you claimed to pay for. That was all me. They discovering that their son, their brothers, their golden boy is nothing but a fraud. Tom slumped in his chair, defeated. How long have you known about? He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back your affairs, your secret account, your plans to leave with what you thought was your money. I closed my folder calmly from the beginning. Tom, I'm the CEO of a bank, did. You really think I wouldn't notice? Security stepped forward, ready to escort him. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting. Building. Preparing out one more thing. I added, remember last night's dinner when you all laughed about me being just the secretary who got lucky when your mothers complained about my cooking and suggested I focus on being a better wife? Tom Dem. Moded numbly, I've arranged. He saw my smile and missed the storm. It held back a special lunch today. Your family will be dining in the executive dining room. As my guests, I thought they might enjoy seeing why's their simple secretary daughter-in-law actually works, though I apologize in advance if the potatoes aren't up to your mother's standards, as I wasn't hiding. I was documenting. Building, preparing. Security led Tom away. I could hear the commotion from the reception area, while his family was witnessing his disgrace. Barbara's wails of how could you mingled with Jennifer's shocked gasps and Harold's angry denunciations. Mrs. Chin Bradley appeared at my elbow. Your in-laws, or the silence I wore, wasn't weakness. It was armor. Quite distressed. Shall I cancel lunch? No, I smiled. Gathering my papers, I think it's time they learned exactly who they've been looking. Down on all these years, and Bradley makes sure to serve potatoes with lunch. I want them cooked perfectly. The aftermath. What he didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table was everything I'd anticipated. Tom's arrest made. Headlines in the financial papers, though. The bank stock actually rose when it was revealed how quickly we caught and stopped his embezzlement attempts. His family's social standing crumbled as their years of boasting about Tom's financial genius. The silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor, came back to haunt them. Barbara tried to call several times, alternating between apologies and accusations. I had my assistant send his a lovely gift basket with a note, sorry about the potatoes. At that last dinner, I've been too busy running my bank to while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact, perfect my cooking. Jennifer's attempts to explain away his years of condescension fell flat when I donated a significant sum to his children's private school in my name alone. The school board promptly renamed the science. Wing after me, much to his mortification, Tomk final. He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table. Text message came the day before his criminal trial. I never knew who you really were. No, I replied, you never bethist to. Ask 6 months later, I hosted a dinner party in my home, my grandmother's home, that had never belonged to Tom at while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact all as I moved among my guests. Many of them. The same board members who had witnessed Tom's downfall. I overheard snippets of conversation about the bank's record profits. Under my leadership, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Tom had accepted a plea deal. He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table he would serve 5 years for embezzlement, followed by supervised release, his assets. What few were actually his would be forfeited. I smiled, thinking, of the safe in my office that still held all the documentation of his crime, I kept everything, just as the silence I wore wasn't. Weakness. It was armor. Kept the video of that final board meeting, not out of bitterness or revenge, but as a reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. That evening I received one final text from Barbara. They built their power on condescension and called it charm. Have paid more attention to who you really were instead of who we assumed you were. Yes, I replied, you should have, by the way. I've perfected my potato recipe. Such a shame you'll never get to try it. The bank's success continued to grow. He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table, and occasionally I would hear rumors about Tom. He tried dating after his release, but it seemed women were hesitant to get involved with a convicted embezzler who lived in a rented room and worked as a junior bookkeeper. The only job he could get, I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing with his record. Sometimes when I'm working late in my corner office, I think about that last dinner party, about Tom's bragging and his family's convention. The signs of who I really was had been this all along: the house, the cars, the lifestyle. I wasn't hiding. I was documenting, building, preparing, attributed to Tom's fictional financial genius. They just never thought to question their assumptions about the quiet secretary good-mared into their family. They'd never imagined that sometimes the best revenge isn't in getting. Even it's in letting people's own arrogance blind them until it's... He didn't notice the ledger in my hands while he bragged at the table too late. 5 years after Tom's conviction, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business leadership conference. The topic wasn't about revenge or justice or even success. It was about the importance of being underestimated sometimes. I told the audience the greatest while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact power lies not in proving people wrong, but in letting them be wrong until the right moment. And sometimes the perfect revenge isn't about getting even. It's about revealing who you were all along. After my speech, a young woman asked me, the secret to the silence I wore wasn't weakness. It was armor. My success, I thought about Tom, about his family, about all the years they'd looked down on the simple secretary who served them dinner and endured their condescension. Pay attention, I told us, keep records and never ever let anyone's assumptions about you become your while he played with numbers. I was calculating impact reality as I left the conference. My phone buzzed with a message. Another bank was interested in merging with mine, a deal that would make me one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. I smiled, thinking of Tom and his rented room still. He saw my smile and missed the storm it held back, probably wondering how he'd missed the signs. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about being exactly who you are and watching. Realize how wrong they were not to notice.